Rome. The name echoes through millennia, synonymous with power, law, and, above all, empire. But an empire is not built on ideals alone. It is not forged in senates or philosophies. An empire is built with iron, sweat, and blood. It is carved from the world by the relentless, methodical application of force. It is built by an army. For over 1,000 years, one military force dominated the Western world. It evolved from a part-time militia of farmers into a professional, globe-spanning war machine that conquered peoples from the misty shores of Britain to the scorching deserts of Syria. It defeated phalanxes, outmaneuvered nomadic horsemen, and systematically crushed tribal confederations 50 times its size. The Roman Legion was more than just an army. It was an engine of conquest, an instrument of engineering, and a vector of civilization. It built the roads that connected the world, the walls that defended it, and the aqueducts that gave it life. And, in the end, it was the very weapon that turned upon its masters and tore the Republic apart, paving the way for the emperors. How did the army of a single unremarkable city on the Tiber River evolve to conquer the known world? This is not just a story of battles. This is the story of a system, a story of evolution, adaptation, and logistics. This is the complete history of the masters of war and the Roman army that built our world. In the beginning, there was no legion. In the 8th century BC, the army of Rome was indistinguishable from that of its neighbors. It was a militia. When the war horns blew, the farmer left his plow, grabbed his spear and shield, and stood shoulder to shoulder with his neighbors. This was the army of the kings and the early republic. It was modeled on the dominant military technology of the age, the Greek hoplite. Soldiers, or cives, were required to provide their own equipment. The wealthy could afford bronze cuirasses and helmets. The poor, perhaps only a light shield and a javelin. They fought in a dense formation called the phalanx. The phalanx was a terrifying force on a flat, open plain. It was a human battering ram. But Italy is not a flat, open plain. It is a land of mountains, rugged hills, and dense forests. And in the 4th century BC, Rome's rigid phalanx marched into the unforgiving mountains of Samnium. The Samnite Wars were a crucible for Rome. The Samnites were fierce highland warriors. They refused to fight Rome on its own terms. They used guerrilla tactics, ambushing the slow-moving Roman phalanx in narrow mountain passes, showering it with javelins from wooded slopes, and melting away before the heavy infantry could respond. The Battle of the Caudine Forks in 321 BC was not a defeat. It was a humiliation. An entire Roman army was trapped and forced to pass under the yoke, a symbolic gesture of total submission. Rome learned a bitter lesson. Brute force was not enough. To conquer Italy, the army had to be as flexible as the terrain it fought on. From the ashes of this humiliation, a new Roman army was born. They abandoned the rigid phalanx and created something uniquely Roman, a system that would define their warfare for centuries: the Manipular Legion. The very word legion means levy, but this new legion was a masterpiece of tactical organization. The 4,200-man formation was no longer a single block of spears. It was divided into 30 small independent units called maniples. And these maniples were arranged in a revolutionary three-line system called the triplex axes.
The first line was the hastati. These were the youngest men, the most eager and the most expendable. They were lightly armored, carrying the large scutum shield, a short gladius sword, and 2 heavy javelins called pila. Their job was to engage the enemy first, to absorb the initial shock and fury of the charge, and to fix the enemy in place. Behind them stood the second line, the principes. These were men in the prime of their lives, from 25 to 35. They were more experienced and better equipped, wearing chainmail, the lorica hamata. They were the core of the legion. As the first line of hastati grew tired, they would perform a complex and brilliant maneuver, a passage of lines. The hastati would filter back through the gaps, and the fresh, heavily armed principes would surge forward to take their place, presenting a new, rested, and determined wall of shields and steel to an already weary enemy. And behind them waited the triarii. These were the oldest, wealthiest, and most experienced veterans. They were the last reserve, a hardened core of elite spearmen. They knelt on one knee, their long spears braced, a final, unshakable line of defense. For an enemy to reach the triarii, they would have had to break through 2 full lines of motivated Roman infantry. It was a task few ever accomplished. An old Roman proverb for a desperate situation was, "It has come to the triarii." This system was a stroke of genius. The small, flexible maniples could move independently, allowing the legion to fight on hills, in forests, or in the streets of a city, terrain that would have shattered a phalanx. The 3-line system created defense in depth and a constant rotation of fresh troops. It was this army, the Manipular Legion, that faced its first great test, not from a mountain tribe, but from the other great power of the Mediterranean, Carthage. The Punic Wars stretched the citizen militia to its absolute limit. When the Carthaginian general Hannibal Barca crossed the Alps and invaded Italy, he inflicted a series of catastrophic defeats on this new legion. At the Battle of Cannae in 216 BC, Hannibal's brilliant double envelopment tactic resulted in the single bloodiest day in Roman history. Perhaps 50,000 legionaries were slaughtered. The manipular system had failed to adapt to a tactical genius. But Rome's greatest strength was not just its army, it was its resilience. It was its near infinite pool of citizen soldiers. Rome lost
army after army and simply recruited more. While Hannibal was stranded in Italy, a new Roman general, Scipio Africanus, took the war to Africa. He had studied Hannibal. He adapted. At the Battle of Zama, Scipio used Hannibal's own tactics against him, finally defeating the Carthaginian legend and ending the war. The Manipular Legion had conquered Italy. It had defeated Carthage. It had crushed the Macedonian phalanxes in the east, proving its tactical superiority. By 146 BC, Rome was the undisputed master of the Mediterranean. But this very success created a profound crisis. The system was breaking. The legion was still a militia of cives, of citizen farmers. But the wars were no longer short campaigns to protect a farm. They were 10-year occupations in Spain or protracted sieges in Greece. The citizen soldiers were away from their land for years on end. They returned not to thriving farms, but to debt and ruin. Their small plots were bought up by the wealthy elite, who created massive estates, the latifundia, worked by slaves captured in Rome's wars. The very men who had conquered the world for Rome no longer had a stake in it. The army was shrinking because the class of citizens eligible to serve in it, land-owning farmers, was disappearing. The engine of conquest was running out of fuel. Rome faced a choice: adapt or collapse. The answer would come not from the Senate, but from one of the most ambitious and transformative figures in Roman history, a new man who would, in solving one crisis, create an even deadlier one. His name was Gaius Marius.
The year is 107 BC. Rome is bogged down in a difficult, inglorious war in North Africa against King Jugurtha. The Senate is corrupt, the war is mismanaged, and the army is struggling to find recruits. Gaius Marius, a brilliant general from outside the old aristocracy, is elected consul on a wave of popular support. He needs an army. The traditional levy of land-owning citizens is failing. So Marius does something revolutionary. He shatters a 600-year-old tradition. Marius opens the legions to the proletarii, the landless urban poor who had nothing to offer the state but their own lives. For the first time, a Roman citizen's property, or lack thereof, was irrelevant. This single act changed everything. It solved the manpower crisis overnight, but it fundamentally and permanently altered the nature of the Roman soldier. These new recruits were not citizen farmers fighting for their patria and their land, eager to return to the harvest. They were destitute men fighting for the only thing they could get: a career. They fought for pay, for a share of the plunder, and for the promise of a land grant after their service, a pension their general would have to secure for them, often by force, from a reluctant Senate. The state did not equip these new poor soldiers. The general did. The state did not pay them. The general did. And the state did not give them their retirement bonus. The general did. loyalty shifted. It transferred from the abstract idea of Rome to the very real, tangible sources of their livelihood, the legion, its Aquila, and its commander. The Marian Reforms didn't just create a professional army, they created personal armies. And Marius professionalized every aspect of this new force. He standardized equipment. Every legionary was now a heavy infantryman, equipped by the state, or rather, by the general. The gladius, a short, 20-inch thrusting sword, deadly efficient, not for slashing, but for stabbing. A short, brutal upward thrust into an opponent's belly or face in the chaos of a shield wall. The scutum, no longer the oval shield of the Republic. This was a massive, curved, rectangular shield. It covered a man from his shoulder to his knee. Held in formation, it created an impenetrable, interlocking wall of wood and iron. The lorica segmentata, this iconic armor, made of overlapping iron strips, was a marvel of mass production. It was flexible, offered superior protection to the older chainmail, and was easier to repair in the field. And then the pilum. This was the weapon that won battles. It was a 7-foot javelin, but with a unique design. A long, thin iron shank behind the hardened tip, attached to the wooden shaft with a soft iron rivet or a wooden pin. When a legionary hurled his pilum at 30 yards, it had devastating effects. If it hit a shield, the soft shank would bend on impact. The enemy soldier was now faced with an impossible choice. Tried to fight with a 7-foot unwieldy javelin in his shield, or throw his shield away and face the Roman charge unprotected. If the pilum hit a man, its weight and small tip would punch through armor and inflict a horrific wound. The entire front rank of the enemy would be crippled, disorganized, and disarmed right before the gladius charge began. Marius also reformed the very structure of the legion. The flexible 30-maniple system was too complex for these new, less educated soldiers. Marius streamlined it. He created the cohort. The new legion was composed of 10 cohorts, each with about 480 men. The cohort was a self-contained tactical unit, a mini-legion in itself. This made the legion far easier to command on a chaotic battlefield. A general no longer gave orders to 30 maniples. He gave them to 10 cohorts.
This new army was tough, standardized, and brutally efficient. Marius demanded his soldiers carry everything they needed. They were nicknamed Marius's mules. Each man carried his armor, his weapons, his rations, a shovel, a pickaxe, 2 wooden stakes for building a palisade, and a cooking pot. They were soldiers, engineers, and construction workers, all in one. This new army was unstoppable. Marius used it to annihilate the Cimbrian Teutones, massive Germanic tribes that had threatened to invade Italy. The professional legion had proven its worth, but its true cost was yet to be paid. Marius had created a tool of incredible power, but he had tied that tool to the ambition of individuals. What happens when two such individuals, each with their own personal, loyal army, disagree? The answer came just a few years later. Lucius Cornelius Sulla, a rival of Marius, was given command of a war in the east. Marius, through political maneuvering, had the command transferred to himself. Sulla's response? He did the unthinkable. He took his 6 legions, loyal only to him, and he marched on Rome. It was the first time in history a Roman army had invaded Rome. The seal was broken. The Republic's ultimate taboo was violated. The Marian Reforms had given Rome the professional army it needed to conquer the world, but in doing so, it had signed the Republic's death warrant. This new weapon, the personal army, would be passed from Sulla to Pompey the Great, to Crassus, and, most fatefully, to a young, brilliant, and terrifyingly ambitious general who would use his legions to carve his name into history forever. His name was Gaius Julius Caesar. The professional legion, his loyal instrument, would carry him across the Rubicon, destroy the Republic, and crown him dictator for life, before, in turn, it would be inherited by his adopted son Augustus, who would use it to finally end the chaos and build the Roman Empire.
The Republic was dead, drowned in a century of civil war. In 27 BC, Caesar's heir, Octavian, now known as Augustus, stood as the sole master of the Roman world. He had 60 legions under his command, a bloated, hideously expensive and dangerous force that had just spent decades fighting itself. Augustus' greatest challenge was not conquering new lands, but taming the very beast that had given him power. He needed to solve the problem that Marius had created, the personal loyalist army. His solution was a stroke of administrative genius. He created the first standing, permanent, professional army in Western history, loyal not to a general, but to the emperor and the state. Augustus slashed the number of legions from 60 to 28. He settled hundreds of thousands of veterans in colonies across the empire, giving them the land they had always craved. For the soldiers still in service, he created a standardized, state-funded system. No longer would a soldier depend on his general for pay. He was paid by the state treasury. No longer would he hope for a plot of land from his general's conquests. He was guaranteed a massive cash payout, the Crimea, or a dedicated plot of land from the state upon completion of his service. And that service was a career, a 25-year contract. Let us imagine the life of this new Imperial Legionary. He is 19, poor, and looking for a future. He signs the sacramentum, a sacred oath of loyalty to the emperor, and his old life ends. He is now Legionary Gaius. His life is defined by 3 things: disciplina, labor, and gloria. Discipline is absolute and brutal. He is trained relentlessly. He marches 20 miles a day in full kit, learns to swim, to build, and to kill. He is part of a contubernium, an 8-man tent squad, the smallest unit of the legion. These 8 men live, eat,
march and fight together. They are his new family. Failure is not an option. A sentry who falls asleep on duty is flogged to death by his own tent mates. If his century, a unit of 80 men, breaks in battle, the commander might order decimation. The unit is divided into groups of 10, and each group draws lots. The unlucky soldier is then beaten to death by the other 9. Labor. He is a soldier, but he is also a construction worker. The Roman legionary spent more time with a shovel than with a sword. These legions built the infrastructure of empire, the roads that connected Britain to Syria, the aqueducts that fed cities like Nimes, the massive frontier walls like Hadrian's Wall in Britain or the Limes Germanicus in Germany. These were not built by slaves, they were built by the legionaries themselves, a testament to their engineering skill and relentless labor.
And finally, Gloria. Glory and pay. A legionary received a stable salary, but the real money was in conquest. He received a share of the plunder and special bonuses, or donativa, from the emperor on special occasions. After 25 years of this brutal life, if he survived, he was granted his pension, a small fortune, and most importantly, Roman citizenship for his family, if they didn't already have it. But the 28 legions, about 150,000 men, were not enough to police an empire of 60 million. Augustus knew this, so he created a parallel force, another brilliant innovation, the auxilia. The auxilia were non-citizen subjects of the empire. They were the special forces. While the legions provided the heavy infantry, the auxilia provided the cavalry, the archers, and the light infantry. They were paid less than a legionary and often sent into the most dangerous, low-intensity conflicts. But they were offered the greatest prize of all. After 25 years of loyal service, an auxiliary soldier and all of his children were granted full Roman citizenship. It was the single greatest engine of Romanization the empire ever devised. It took the sons of conquered barbarians, put them in Roman armor, taught them Latin, and, a generation later, turned them into Romans. This imperial army was for 2 centuries the guarantor of the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. It transformed from a mobile army of conquest, as it was under Caesar, into a static, defensive force, a police force for the civilized world. Its primary job was no longer to conquer, but to guard. The legions were stationed in massive, permanent fortresses along the 3 great frontiers, the Rhine, the Danube, and the Euphrates. They were the iron wall that separated the Roman world from the barbarians outside. But Augustus created one more unit, a force meant to protect the emperor himself, a force that would, ironically, become the single greatest threat to his life, the Praetorian Guard. These were the elite, hand-picked men, mostly from Italy. They received double the pay of a legionary, served a shorter term of 16 years and were stationed in Rome. They were the emperor's personal bodyguards. But they quickly realized their unique position. They were the only army near the seat of power. They became the kingmakers and the king-slayers. They assassinated Caligula. They murdered Pertinax and literally auctioned the Roman Empire to the highest bidder. For centuries, the story of the imperial succession was the story of who could bribe or control the Praetorian Guard. The tool Augustus created to protect the throne became the throne's greatest weakness.
The Imperial Legion was a masterpiece of system and synergy. Its victories were not accidents, nor were they, as is often believed, the result of superior technology. The Romans were not brilliant inventors. They were brilliant perfectionists and integrators. They took the best ideas from their enemies, the gladius from the Spanish, the helmet from the Gauls, shipbuilding from the Carthaginians, and integrated them into a system that was ruthlessly efficient. Anatomy of victory begins not on the battlefield, but on the march. The old adage says, an army marches on its stomach. No one understood this better than the Romans. Logistics was their true secret weapon. Their empire was bound together by over 250,000 miles of paved all-weather roads. These viae allowed legions to move at incredible speeds, covering 20 to 25 miles a day, reaching a crisis point on a distant frontier weeks before an enemy could expect them. These roads were arteries, carrying not just soldiers, but a constant, staggering flow of supplies. A single legion of 5,000 men required 12 tons of grain every single day. This supply chain, transported by ship, barge down rivers, and hauled by mules, was the logistical backbone that allowed Roman armies to operate for years in hostile territory, far from any friendly city. And when this army stopped for the night, it performed a feat that no other army in history had perfected. They did not simply post sentries, they built a fortified city, every single night, in 3 to 4 hours.
As soon as the legion halted, a perimeter was marked. Some units stood guard. The rest went to work. With the shovels and pickaxes they carried, they dug a ditch, 10 feet wide, 8 feet deep. The earth from the ditch was used to build a rampart, 10 feet high. And into the top of that rampart, they drove the 2 wooden stakes, the sudes, that each man carried. The result was a palisade wall surrounded by a ditch. Inside, leather tents were erected in a perfect grid, with streets, a headquarters, and a hospital. This castra, or camp, was identical every single night. Every soldier knew exactly where his tent was, where the armory was, where his officer was. This camp made the Roman legion invincible on the march. It was immune to night attacks, immune to ambushes. An enemy army that found a Roman legion was not finding a weary group of soldiers sleeping in a field. They were finding a fortified, defended, and alert fortress. When the legion chose to fight, it fought on its own terms. The battlefield was an arena of applied, industrial-scale violence. The classic formation was the triplex Achis, the 3-line system, now adapted for the cohort. The front line would wait, silent, shields locked, as the enemy charged. The psychological pressure was immense.
the barbarians would sprint across 100 yards, screaming, working themselves into a frenzy. The Romans just stood, silent, waiting. At the last possible second, a deafening roar. The front ranks of the legion hurled their pila. A storm of 2,000 heavy javelins would rip through the enemy charge. The front line of the enemy would disintegrate into a shattered, screaming mass of men impaled to their own shields. Before the enemy could recover, before the dust settled, the second command, Gladium! The Romans would charge into the broken formation. This was where the gladius reigned supreme. The Roman soldier was trained not to slash wildly, but to stay in formation, shield locked with his neighbor, and stab. He used his shield, the scutum, as a weapon, punching the enemy off balance, and then delivered a short, economical, and utterly lethal thrust with the gladius. While a barbarian was winding up for a massive overhand swing with a long sword, the Roman had already stabbed him twice in the gut. And if the enemy held their ground, the Roman formations would rotate. The men in the front line would fight for 15 minutes, then filter back, and a fresh, rested line of men would take their place. The Roman legion was a meat grinder, one that constantly presented a fresh blade. But what if the enemy refused to fight in the open? What if they hid behind massive stone walls?
Then the legionary put down his sword and became the most terrifying engineer of the ancient world. Roman siegecraft was a psychological and physical terror. They had ballistae, giant crossbows that could hurl fist-sized bolts with pinpoint accuracy, sniping defenders off a wall from 400 yards. They had onagers and catapultae, torsion engines that could hurl 80-pound stones, smashing fortifications to rubble. They had the Ares, or battering ram, a 100-foot-long iron-tipped log protected by a shed that would hammer a gate relentlessly, day and night. The ultimate expression of this mastery was Julius Caesar's siege of Alesia in 52 BC. Caesar had trapped the Gallic chieftain Vercingetorix and 80,000 of his warriors inside the fortress of Alesia. But Caesar knew a massive Gallic relief army, numbering over 200,000, was on its way. He was about to be besieged by the army he was besieging. His solution was insane in its scale. He ordered his men to build 2 walls. The first was a 10-mile wall of circumvallation, facing inward to keep Vercingetorix trapped. This wall included towers, ditches, and hidden traps. Then he ordered them to build a second wall, 13 miles long, facing outward. This wall of contravallation was to defend Caesar's army from the Gallic relief force. When the relief army arrived, Caesar's 50,000 legionaries were trapped between 2 enemy forces that outnumbered them 5-1. What followed was one of the most desperate and brilliant battles in history. Caesar's legions fought in 2 directions at once, shuttling reserves to crisis points, holding their fortified lines. In the end, Roman discipline and engineering triumphed. The Gallic relief army shattered. Vercingetorix, seeing his hope vanish, surrendered. Caesar had conquered Gaul. This was the Roman army at its zenith,
an integrated system of logistics, engineering, discipline, and tactical brilliance. It seemed invincible, but no system lasts forever, and the greatest threat to the Legion would come not from a barbarian, but from within.
The golden age of the Pax Romana ended with the death of Marcus Aurelius in 180 AD. The ascension of his unstable son, Commodus, marked the beginning of a long, slow decay. After Commodus was assassinated, the army reverted to its deadliest habit. The year 193 AD was a horrific echo of the Republic's fall. The Praetorian Guard murdered the new emperor, and the frontier legions, the armies of the Danube, the Rhine, and Syria, each proclaimed their own general as emperor. The prize was no longer honor, it was money. This ignited the crisis of the 3rd century, a 50-year period of near total anarchy. More than 26 barracks emperors claimed the throne in 50 years. Most were generals, proclaimed by their troops, who ruled for a few months before being murdered by those same troops for a larger bonus. The army was no longer the state's protector. It was a parasite, draining the treasury and killing its masters. The empire fractured. The Gallic Empire broke away in the west, the Palmyrene Empire in the east. Barbarian tribes, Goths, Franks, Alemanni, poured across the frontiers, which were left undefended as the legions marched inward to fight each other for the throne. The empire was saved from total collapse by a series of iron-willed soldier emperors, most notably Diocletian and Constantine the Great. They recognized that the old Augustan system was broken. The empire and its army had to be completely rebuilt. Their reforms created the late Roman army, and it looked almost nothing like the army of Caesar or Augustus.
Diocletian, realizing the empire was too large for one man, split the army's command. More importantly, he split the army's function. The first force was the Limitanei. These were border guards, stationed in forts along the frontier. They were second-class troops, part-time soldiers who were also farmers. Their job was not to defeat an invasion, but to delay it, to act as a tripwire. The true power of the empire was now held by the comitantes. This was a large, central, mobile field army. They were the empire's firefighters. When a barbarian tribe breached the frontier, the Limitanei would signal the alarm, and this elite mobile force would be dispatched to find and destroy the threat. The equipment changed too. The Lorica segmentata vanished. It was too expensive. The gladius was replaced by the spatha, a longer, heavier slashing sword, better suited for fighting on horseback. The rectangular scutum was replaced by a simpler, cheaper, oval or round shield. The new emphasis was on cavalry. The legions of the old empire had been 90% heavy infantry. The late Roman army relied heavily on cataphracti, heavily armored shock cavalry, an idea borrowed from their Persian enemies. But the most significant change was who was fighting. Rome was running out of Romans. Centuries of plague, civil war, and a declining population meant it was harder and harder to recruit. So the emperors turned to the barbarians themselves.
They recruited entire tribes, Goths, Franks, Vandals, into the army as Foederati, or allies. These tribes were not broken up and absorbed. They were allowed to fight under their own kings, in their own style, in exchange for Roman pay and land within the empire. This was a deal with the devil. In the short term, it solved the manpower crisis, but it barbarized the army. The Roman army began to look, sound, and fight just like the barbarians it was supposed to be defending against. The very definition of Roman began to blur. In 378 AD, this new system faced its ultimate test. The Eastern Emperor Valens led his field army against a massive force of refugee Goths at Adrianople. It was a disaster. The Roman legions, exhausted and poorly led, were shattered by a surprise charge from the Gothic heavy cavalry. Emperor Valens was killed, and 2/3 of the Eastern army was annihilated. Adrianople was a profound shock. It was the worst Roman defeat since Cannae. But unlike Cannae, Rome could not simply raise a new army of citizens. Its recruits were the Goths. The battle sent a clear message. The day of the heavy infantry legion was over. The age of the heavy cavalry, the medieval knight, had begun. This brings us to the fall. In 476 AD, the last Western Roman emperor, a boy named Romulus Augustulus, was deposed. But who deposed him? A barbarian king? Not exactly. He was deposed by Alesia, a Germanic chieftain, but Alesia was also a Roman general. His army, which demanded land in Italy, was the official Roman army of Italy. It was a force composed almost entirely of Foederati, Germanic mercenaries who were, in name, fighting for Rome. The fall of Rome was not a foreign conquest. It was a military coup, led by a Roman general, using the official Roman army to depose a Roman emperor it no longer wished to obey. The engine had consumed its masters. The army that Augustus had professionalized had become fully privatized. The Foederati were loyal only to their paymaster and their chieftain, just as Caesar's legions had been loyal only to him. The long, slow revolution started by Gaius Marius was finally complete.
The Western Roman army did not fall. It evolved. It dissolved. It assimilated into the very barbarian kingdoms it had recruited, handing its traditions down to the Frankish, Gothic, and Lombard warlords who would forge the new nations of medieval Europe. In the East, the Roman army would live on for another 1,000 years as the Byzantine army, a story of its own. When we look back on this 2,000-year story, from the first citizen militia to the last Foederati general,
what was the true genius of the Roman army. It was not one thing. It was a system. It was, first, adaptability. The Roman army was a ruthless learner. It stole its best weapons from its enemies. It learned guerrilla warfare from the Samnites, tactics from Hannibal, and heavy cavalry from the Persians. It was not proud, it was practical. Second, engineering and logistics. The legionary was a soldier engineer who won wars with his shovel as much as his sword. The castra made him invincible, and the roads made him unstoppable. Third, discipline. A brutal, relentless, iron-willed discipline that forged men into a cohesive unit, a machine that would hold its ground when any other army would break and run. And finally, integration. The army was the pathway to being Roman. It took Gauls, Spaniards, Illyrians, and Germans, and through 25 years of shared service, shared language, and shared law, it forged them into Romans. The legacy of the Roman army is not just in the annals of military history. It is written into the very map of modern Europe. The great cities they founded as military camps, London, Paris, Vienna, Cologne, are still the hearts of nations. The roads they built are still walked upon. The legal principles they carried with them became the foundation of Western law. The Roman legion was the iron skeleton upon which the modern Western world was built. It was the most successful, most influential, and most enduring military system ever devised. It was the true master of war.